Skalnin never married, never explained himself. He just kept on building. Where Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana meet, Mount Roraima rises out of the jungle like a stone slab dropped from the sky, towering over the surrounding rainforest. It's not just a mountain, it's a topoi, part of a unique class of flat-top formations found in the Guianan highlands. And at 2,810 meters, or 9,219 feet, with a summit spanning 31 square kilometers, or 12 square miles, it's among the largest and most
Though you
iconic.
aren't of the Legion,
The
you've
sides
aided
are
us
sheer
more than
cliffs,
once.
vertical, smooth,
acquire
and
many
difficult to
items
climb
on
without
our
gear.
raids, some
From a distance,
useless to us,
Roraima
some
looks less like a
I've
mountain,
provided
and
you
more
the
like the
location of
Earth
a
just
drop
decided to
box where you
stop
can obtain
trying
these
and
items.
just
The box will
leave a corner
please be
unfinished.
aware that we'll assume
It's also
many
the
items
original
left in the box
inspiration for The
will be
Lost World
unwanted
by Sir
and be
Arthur Conan
removed
Doyle.
and
The
destroyed.
book's premise, a prehistoric world located on a plateau, was directly
Stay an
drawn
ally
from
of the
Roraima's
Legion, and we
strange
will share our
geography.
loot with you.
Reaching the summit requires
start
a
working against
3-day
us, we'll
trek
become
through
an enemy.
rainforest and
Our
across
deal
the Grand
ends.
Sabana Plateau. Hikers typically begin in the Venezuelan town of Paraipoi, and the route includes muddy paths, river crossings, and a final scramble up a natural slope on the mountain's south face, the only non-technical route to the top. Once on the summit, the environment shifts dramatically. The surface is primarily black sandstone, weathered into surreal shapes by wind and rain over hundreds of millions of years. Pools of rainwater collect in craters, mist rolls in and out without warning, temperatures drop and visibility vanishes.
just don't adapt
The air
like
is
we should.
cooler. Damp,
Used to be that all
often
you needed to
feeling
get your
more
way.
like highland
Now,
tundra than tropical
people are
jungle.
armed and
The top of
organized. They're
Roraima
not
supports an
afraid.
ecosystem found nowhere else on Earth. Roughly 1/3 of the plant species
Yeah,
up
but
there are
only if you've got
endemic.
bodies
Some
to
grow
build the
directly
suits.
from the rock.
We don't
Others,
take on new
like certain
members.
carnivorous
Something's
plants,
gonna have to
thrive
change,
in the
or the
nutrition
empty
poor
suits are gonna
soil
be
by
all that-
digesting insects, while a few species of frogs and invertebrates have also adapted to life on the isolated plateau.
See you around.
It's a natural laboratory of evolution, shaped by isolation and harsh conditions. Indigenous people, like the Perman and Kapon, regard the mountain as sacred. Their oral histories describe it as the stump of a mythical tree felled by a god named Makanaima, scattering the fruits of the earth across the land. The mountain, they say, is what's left of that tree. It's a really big tree. Roraima's isolation, difficult access, and otherworldly summit continue to attract scientists and trekkers alike. But unlike many famous peaks, it resists easy tourism. There are no permanent structures or facilities at the top, just wind, rock, and water. At the base of Mount Fuji, where volcanic rock litters the ground and daylight battles through the treetops, lies Aokigahara, also known as the Sea of Trees. It's a dense, quiet, and unnervingly still place. The forest covers 35 square kilometers or 14 square miles, and once you're inside, everything, sound, direction, even time, it feels muffled. Porous lava underfoot absorbs noise, while compasses spin unpredictably. It's a place that confuses the senses. Aokigahara has a long association with death. In folklore, it's linked to Yurei, restless spirits of the dead, and was once rumored to be the site of Ubisude, a mythical practice of leaving the elderly to die in the wilderness. Lovely. There's little proof that never happened, but the legend stuck. In modern times, it gained a darker reputation after the 1960s novel Nami no To depicted lovers taking their lives in the forest. Since then, it's been known grimly as Japan's suicide forest. Authorities do not release numbers anymore, but past estimates put the annual death toll in the dozens. Warning signs are posted at trailheads urging visitors to seek help, talk to family, and call support lines. Search teams occasionally patrol the area. It's also Logan Paul. Jesus. Most people come here to hike or explore, but some come for other reasons, bringing string to mark their path, just in case they decide to return. But Aokigahara is more than the macabre headline, it's also strikingly beautiful. Thick moss blankets, the rocks, trees twist in strange directions shaped by wind and lava flows, ice caves and hidden tunnels pocket the landscape. On clear days, you can catch a glimpse of Mount Fuji through breaks in the canopy, and it's not hard to see why some people come here seeking solitude. True solitude, not death. Just distance from everything else. Yet, of course, the forest has its stories. Visitors talk of whispers, shadows, strange lights. Some swear they've been followed, though they saw no one. Strings tied between trees appear like bright spiderwebs in the gloom. Some old, some recent, some snapped. It's easy to get lost here, and easier still to not want to be found. In western Madagascar, where the ground seems to have gone feral, you'll find one of the most bizarre landscapes on Earth. The Singi Dipamahara roughly translates as where one cannot walk barefoot is a jagged limestone forest made entirely of razor-sharp stone. Not figuratively sharp, it's literally sharp, the kind of terrain that turns a stumble into a medical emergency. The formations, known as Singi, are sculpted over millions of years as rainwater or acidic runoff eroded the porous limestone. The result is a sprawling labyrinth of spires, canyons, and knife-edged ridges, some over 90 meters or 300 feet tall, forming a stone skyline that looks like the aftermath of a tectonic temper tantrum. From above, it resembles a frozen forest of grey needles. From below, it's like being inside a rock blender. Navigation isn't casual. This isn't the sort of place you wander through in flip-flops, all right? Paths are narrow, vertical, and often require harnesses, ladders, and fixed cables. You're clambering through crevices barely wider than your shoulders or crossing rope bridges suspended between limestone towers. Hikers wear gloves to avoid slicing their hands.
I'll get out of your hair then.
Even the park's best-known trails feel more like obstacle courses designed by some sort of sadistic mountain goat. And yet, life thrives here. Somehow, in the cracks and crevices, you'll find unique orchids, mosses, and even entire trees growing from what looks like solid rock. Lemurs, several species of them, leap effortlessly between spars. Birds and bats roost in narrow caves. Tiny reptiles dart across ledges like they've lived here for millennia, which in many cases they have. Over 80% of the species in the park are endemic. Evolution in the Tsingy isn't just about survival, but about extreme adaptation. The national park, which is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, also includes mangroves, dry forests, and hidden rivers running beneath the stone. Some of the caves are vast, with underground chambers that remain largely unexplored. Scientists studying the region are still finding new species, especially in the darker, more remote corners. Getting there is absolutely not a small feat. You'll need to brave bone-rattling tracks, river crossings by makeshift ferry, and a logistical maze of permits, guides, and patience. But the effort does pay off. There's no other landscape like it. Alien, vertical, and violently indifferent to your comfort. Just off the blocks, in a quiet stretch of the East River, lies an island most New Yorkers have never seen and few could name. It's called North Brother Island, and despite sitting within shouting distance of Manhattan, it might as well belong to another world. Overgrown, abandoned, and sealed to the public, it's a 20-acre time capsule of quarantine wards, empty halls, and ghost stories rooted in facts. The island's official history begins in the 1880s, when city officials, faced with growing public health threats, needed somewhere to isolate patients with contagious diseases. Far enough to avoid contamination, close enough for easy ferry access. North Brother did the job. Riverside Hospital was established here to treat smallpox, tuberculosis, typhus, and other infectious diseases at a time when treatment often meant containment. The island soon grew into a full-scale medical compound with separate buildings for staff, patients, and supplies.
Now why the hell should
its most
I do
infamous
that?
resident was
You're below
Mary
me, kid.
Mallon, better known as
I've been
Typhoid
killing
Mary.
scum
She
twice
was the
your
first
size
person
since
in the
before your
United
mother
States
squeezed you
identified
out.
as a healthy carrier of typhoid fever. Despite being warned, she continued working as a cook, infecting dozens of people. After repeated violations, she was
That sounds
forcibly
like a bit of a
quarantined on
bargain.
North
I get
Brother
to walk
Island in
free with the Garys,
1915.
thinking I'm
She lived
dead.
there for over 2
Sure,
decades
you
until
can
her
have my
death
hat.
in
I can always
1938,
buy
never
another
truly
capsule I've got
accepting the
left.
science behind her
Would've been more
exile.
fun fighting it
Tragedy
out, though.
also
See
struck
you
from
later,
the
kid.
outside. In 1904, the passenger steamship General Slocum caught fire in the East River just off the island's shore. Over 1,000 people, mostly women and children on a church outing, died in what remains one of America's worst maritime disasters. Many of the bodies were brought ashore here, and the island became an impromptu morgue for the dead. Following World War II, the island found one last purpose. The hospital buildings were repurposed as a rehabilitation centre for teenage drug users. But the program quickly spiraled into dysfunction, with reports of mistreatment and neglect. By the early 1960s, the facility shut down for good. Staff left, patients were removed, and North Brother Island was left to rot. Nature moved in almost immediately. Vines choked stairwells, trees grew through the floors, birds nested in collapsed rafters. Today, the island is a protected nesting site for herons and egrets, and the city strictly controls entry. No public tours, no casual visits, just the remains of tiled walls, crumbling docks, and rusting beds in dust-coated silence. Despite being surrounded by millions of people, North Brother Island remains out of sight and out of reach. Its ruins visible from the shore, but barely, with the buildings standing just intact enough to hint at the fact that there was once life there. It's not haunted in the traditional sense, but it does carry a weight of disease, disaster, isolation, and abandonment. Few places in New York feel more forgotten, and fewer still have seen so much. In the Namib Desert, where the sand runs red and the sun does not blink, a strange pattern spreads across the ground, like nature forgot to finish the job. They're called fairy circles, thousands of almost perfect rings of bare earth, each rimmed by a tidy halo of grass. From above, the landscape looks like it's been stung by a swarm of geometric bees. They stretch across hundreds of miles in Namibia and southern Angola. Some are just a few feet wide, others reach 12 meters or 40 feet across. And they aren't scattered at random. The circles cluster in tight, repeating grids with enough regularity to make satellite images look artificially
People
generated.
are saying the Securitrons are
they're
acting
all real.
funny.
And for decades,
I hope that old
no
geezer
one's
house
been
is
entirely
dead.
sure
Might give the
why they're there. One of the earliest theories blamed
Yes.
termites.
Where's his hat?
The idea was that subterranean colonies were eating the
This
roots of
is
plants
great
from below,
news.
clearing
No one
patches and
screws
letting
with the
moisture
Garrett
collect
twins.
at the edges
And
where
for your
grasses
reward,
could grow.
here's
This fits with some
150
field studies
caps.
until researchers
I
found
trust there
identical
were also
circles
some-
in areas
You
without
can have
any
the corner
termite activity
room,
at all.
rent-free.
Other suggestions have
It
included
was
toxic
McCaffrey.
gases, fungal growth, or even radioactive soil. And inevitably, something
Talk to you
was
later.
aliens, because of course they did. More recently, ecologists have leaned toward a theory of self-organization, where in extreme environments like this, water is scarce and plants may space themselves out to avoid competition.
Hate to say
And by
it,
forming
business
rings,
has
they
improved
maximize
since the
access to
troopers started
moisture and
coming from
nutrients,
Freeside
creating a
to get-
natural feedback system that keeps the pattern going. There are no insects, no gases, just the plants doing the maths. The Himba people of Namibia have their own stories. Some say the circles are the footprints of gods. Others believe they're made by spirits dancing at night, or the breath of dragons sleeping beneath the sand. All of which is definitely real. These explanations might sound fantastical, and that's because they are. But what makes the fairy tale circle so compelling is their persistence.
Pleasure doing
Researchers
business
have
with you.
measured the soil, monitored rainfall, tested for microbial life, and tracked satellite images for decades, and yet the phenomenon remains largely unresolved. It's not just one cause, it might be many, working in ways that we don't fully understand. Seen from the air, the circles are mesmerizing, stark, circular, and impossibly uniform. They create the illusion of order in an otherwise chaotic landscape. On the ground, they're quieter, just bare patches of earth surrounded by scrub. But even then, there's something slightly off about them. They're not magic, they're not a hoax, they're just unexplained and unmistakable. In the Venetian lagoon, just a short boat ride from the polished marble of Venice, sits a small island that looks perfectly ordinary from a distance. I've seen this one. Trees, old brickwork, nothing out of place. But locals don't go there. Some won't even say its name. The island is called Poveglia, and it might be Italy's darkest patch of land. Its history reads like a checklist of human misery. In the 1700s, Venice used Poveglia as a quarantine zone during repeated plague outbreaks, but quarantine is a really nice way of putting it. Infected people were shipped here en masse, often against their will, and just left to die. Thousands were buried in pits or burned in open-air pyres, with some estimates suggesting over 100,000 people died. The soil, they say, is more ash than earth. When the plague years passed, the island sat idle, until someone had the idea to build an asylum there. In the early 20th century, Poveglia was converted into a psychiatric hospital, a remote facility where troubled patients could be kept out of sight. The conditions were bleak, and that's saying the least. Reports mentioned crude surgeries, forced treatments, and isolation cells. One story, probably exaggerated, but who really knows when it comes to the gruesome world of asylum care, tells a story of a doctor who performed lobotomies until he lost his mind and fell or was pushed from the bell tower. I think I made a video about that, and it's a myth. Locals say you can still hear the bell, even though it was removed decades ago. You can't. The asylum closed in 1968, and since then the island has been abandoned. Buildings
Welcome to
rot
the
in
atomic
silence,
rack.
walls crumble, ivy climbs through broken
How many
windows.
chips would you like?
Trees have grown thick, not in a romantic,
Here's your
overgrown
chip.
ruin kind of way, but like the island is slowly trying to hide
How many
itself. No one lives here, no one
Here's your
works here.
chips.
No ferries stop here. It's officially off limits.
How
The
much-
Italian government has blocked access for years, citing safety and preservation.
Here's your
A few
chips.
explorers
Is there
have managed to sneak in. Journalists,
How many-
thrill seekers, ghost hunters. Some come back shaken, some don't talk about it.
Here's your
Stories
chip.
swirl of shadows in doorways, whispers in empty halls, and
Enjoy
the
your
inexplicable feeling that you're not alone. There have been attempts to redevelop it. A few years ago, investors floated plans for a luxury hotel, but that
Place your
quietly
bets
collapsed.
and give the
Another
wheel a spin.
project proposed a public park, but that went nowhere. Every proposal hits a wall. Permits, money, timing. Or maybe nobody quite has it in them to bring fun to a place of such horror. In the southeast corner of Romania, near the Black Sea, and surrounded by nothing more than farmlands, lies a patch of ground with no sign of what's beneath it. No markings, no warning, it's just a concrete slab. But under that slab is one of the strangest ecosystems on the planet, Moville Cave. Sealed off from the surface for over 5 million years, it was discovered by accident in 1986 when workers drilling for a power plant cracked into it. What they found wasn't oil or gas. It was a world that had evolved without sunlight, oxygen, or any contact with the outside. Inside, the conditions are toxic. The air's thick with hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, and ammonia. Oxygen hovers at just 7 to 10%, about half of what we're used to. There's no light, no fresh air, and the whole place, well, it stinks of rotten eggs. Yet somehow, life absolutely thrives here. Not just a few microbes, but a whole web of weirdness. More than 50 species of invertebrates have been identified so far, and most of them exist nowhere else. These creatures don't rely on photosynthesis, they survive through chemosynthesis, a process where bacteria feed on the cave's sulfur compounds, forming a microbial mat that supports worms, spiders, millipedes, and water scorpions. Which is a new terrifying thing I had no idea existed 30 seconds ago. Some are blind, others have no pigment. Most look like the kind of thing you'd expect to find under a microscope or, well, in your nightmares. The food chain starts with chemistry here, not sunlight. Access is tightly controlled. You enter through a narrow shaft, descend ladders, and squeeze through passages half flooded with sulfuric sludge. Only a handful of researchers are allowed in at a time, and even then visits are short. The atmosphere corrodes electronics and eats through lungs. But what they find is priceless, a model for how life could exist in the most extreme places. And that's why NASA's interested. Moville Cave is the closest thing we have to an alien ecosystem on Earth. If life can develop in a dark, poisonous pocket under Romanian farmlands, it might also exist under the crust of Europa or buried in Martian rock. No sun, no sky, just the right chemistry. From the surface, it looks like nothing. But below, it's a 5 million-year-old experiment still running. Just off the coast of Belize, in the middle of the Caribbean Sea, sits a perfect circle of deep blue water that looks like the ocean is missing a piece. It's called the Great Blue Hole, not a poetic name, but an accurate one. It's a sinkhole, wide, round, and so deep it turns the sea nearly black. It measures around 305 meters or 1,000 feet across and drops 125 meters or 410 feet straight down into limestone bedrock. It's part of the Belize Barrier Reef, the second largest reef system in the world, and from above, it doesn't look real. Just a dark, navy eye in a sea of turquoise, ringed with coral and perfectly symmetrical, as if the ocean punched a hole in itself and then forgot to patch it. The Blue Hole was popularized by Jacques Cousteau in 1971 when he brought his research vessel, the Calypso, to explore it. He declared it one of the world's top dive sites, and for good reason. Diving here is like descending into a vertical cave. The first 100 feet or so are startlingly clear. Then the limestone walls peel back into massive underwater chambers filled with stalactites. These formations could only have formed in dry air, which tells us something really strange. This place was once a cave above sea level. That was during the last ice age, but as glaciers melted and sea levels rose, the cave flooded. Eventually, the roof collapsed, creating the enormous sinkhole that we see today. It's not just a dive site, it's a flooded fossil. But make no mistake, it's also really dangerous. The deeper you go, the darker and deadlier it gets. At around 300 feet, or 91 meters, oxygen vanishes and hydrogen sulfide takes over. Visibility drops. At least 3 people have died in the Blue Hole, and probably several that we don't know of. In 2018, a team led by Richard Branson sent a submersible to the bottom. They mapped it in 3D, confirmed the strange chemistry, and even found the remains of 2 divers who disappeared years earlier. There were no sea monsters, no lost cities. There was just a lot of silence. Despite all the studies, some questions remain. Why is it so perfectly round? Why is it here in such shallow water? What other ancient structures might lie buried in reef and stone? Scientists can explain a lot, but the Blue Hole has still got a few secrets that it's keeping to itself. From the surface, it's beautiful, from the air hypnotic, but up close it's pretty unnerving. One moment you're floating above coral gardens, the next you're peering into a cold vertical tunnel that vanishes into blackness. And down there is no light, there is no sound, there's just nothing. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon, hours from the nearest road and hidden beneath the jungle canopy, there is a river that shouldn't exist. It's called Shenay Timbishka, boiled with the heat of the sun in the local language, and the name is not an exaggeration. This river is hot, scalding, steaming, flesh-peeling hot. And the strangest part, it's nowhere near a volcano, which is the usual source for such heat. The river winds through the forest about 6.4 kilometers or 4 miles. In some places, the water reaches over 93 Celsius, that's 200 Fahrenheit. That's nearly boiling point. Steam pours off the surface like fog in Fast Forward, and frogs that fall into it don't hop back out, while birds that misjudge a landing get poached. The banks are marked with dead roots and scorched mud, nature's version of a warning sign. The world outside the Amazon knew little about it until geophysicist Andres Russo followed a childhood story from his grandfather, and when looking for it, he expected a tall tale, but what he found was a natural phenomenon barely documented by science. His research helped confirm the river's extreme heat and forced scientists to confront a geological oddity. How can water get this hot without any volcanic activity nearby? The answer, or at least the best working theory, lies deep underground. Cracks in the Earth's crust, faults invisible at the surface, may allow rainwater to seep down far enough to heat up from geothermal pressure. That superheated water then rushes back to the surface and pours into the riverbed, cooking everything in its path. It's geothermal plumbing on a hyperlocal scale, rare, unstable, and still not entirely understood. But while science tries to map the system, the local people have always seen the river differently. To them, Shenay Timbishka isn't just curiosity, it's sacred. A place where the earth speaks through steam and heat. For generations, they've used the river in rituals, healing, and stories. It's not a tourist attraction to them, it's alive. Getting there is an ordeal in itself, though. You'll need permission, a guide, and a strong tolerance for humidity and mosquito bites. The journey includes hours of jungle trekking, river crossings, and a slow realization that the air is warming not from the sun, but from something underground. When you arrive, the effect is immediate. Here's the water, the thick, damp heat. The smell is earthy, minerally, faintly sulfuric. There are no fences, no platforms, no safety briefings or park rangers, just a river that runs too hot for comfort, hidden in the middle of one of the planet's wildest places. High in the Indian Himalayas, tucked away between crags and glaciers in Uttarakhand, there's a lake that spends most of the year frozen and silent. It's called Rupkund, and for a few short weeks each summer, the ice melts just enough to reveal what lies beneath. Not rocks, not fish, but bones. Hundreds of human skeletons strewn along the shore and lying eerily intact in the water. This is not a legend, it's not a burial ground, it's something far stranger. Rupkund sits more than 5,000 meters or 16,000 feet above sea level, in a place that sees few visitors and offers few explanations. The skeletons were discovered during World War II, and early reports assumed that they were soldiers, but the bones were too old, and there were too many. Later tests dated most of them to the 9th century, around 850 AD, though some appear centuries younger. And then came the DNA results. They revealed two distinct populations, one local, likely from South Asia, and another with clear Eastern Mediterranean ancestry. This means that at least some of the dead, hundreds of them in fact, were not just lost hikers or local travelers. They came from across continents, and they died here together. The leading theory is pretty brutal. Around 1,200 years